Hey everyone, ever catch yourself thinking about like what work's going to look like down the road, with AI, all this automation stuff?
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
For this deep dive, we've got some seriously interesting sources lined up. We're looking at a World Economic Forum article, those folks in the, fancy
They're
suit.
the big thinkers, right?
Exactly. And then we've got this super thought-provoking piece from Medium, almost like a kind of like a warning kind of vibe.
Oh, interesting. So two very different takes.
Totally. So we're going to break it all down, see what we can learn, and figure out like what it means for all of us, for you, no matter where you are in your career journey.
Because it's going to impact everyone, that's for sure. One thing that both of these sources agree on, though, is just how fast things are changing.
It's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the WEF article, it highlights this LinkedIn data, and it says 10% of the jobs we see today, they just didn't exist back in 2000. Like, think about it. Mobile tech, the whole social media explosion.
And now we've got AI about to, kick that into overdrive.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And the WEF, they're predicting that, but get this, by 2030, something like 70% of job skills are going to need, like, a major overhaul.
It's not just about, picking up a new software or something. It's a total shift, like a fundamental change in what work is.
Whoa, 70%. That's massive. So, like you said, not just learning a new app, but fundamental shifts in what work even is. That's honestly a little scary. Do you see that happening already in your work?
Absolutely. I mean, you can see it everywhere. Take the WF's perspective. They're really focusing on the the economic upside of AI, predicting a 14% boost in global GDP by 2030. And a lot of that, it's thanks to AI boosting productivity.
Okay, so they see AI as an engine for growth.
Exactly. They even highlight how 51% of small businesses using AI, they've seen their revenue jump by 10% or more already.
Okay, so there's a strong case there for, embracing AI.
Definitely.
But then you got that Medium article, and it's a lot less rosy, wouldn't you say?
Right. The Medium author, they're not shying away from the anxieties, that whole potential for AI to push people out of jobs.
Yeah. And they had that story about Mr. Clean, right?
Yeah.
Where a guy works somewhere forever and then a robot just takes over.
Yeah. Powerful story. It really brings home that human cost,
It makes you wonder, could my job be next?
Mm.
What happens to people when their skills just become obsolete?
It's a big concern. And this whole skills gap, it's something both articles highlight, right? The skills people have versus what employers are going to need. It's huge.
We're talking about needing to be adaptable, problem solving, critical thinking, all that, right?
All of that. It's like constant learning is the new normal.
Yeah. And the WEF report, I think they said 37% of CEOs are already planning AI training for their employees just to try to keep up.
Yeah.
So at least companies are, starting to get it. They see that they need to upskill their people.
Yeah. But the question is, are we even preparing folks for the right things? Is knowing a bit of coding going to cut it? What are the actual skills we'll need to not just survive, but really thrive in this new world?
That's the million-dollar question for sure. And the WEF, they're putting a lot of emphasis on what they call human-centered skills. Things like creativity, emotional intelligence, that really complex problem solving.
So basically, where humans still beat the bots.
Exactly.
It's not just about coding skills, but being able to think critically, be flexible, actually collaborate with humans and AI systems.
Yeah, it's like developing a hybrid skill set. Technical know-how, but also those uniquely human qualities that are, much harder to program.
Makes sense. So we got to be ready for this hybrid future. But then there's that question, that kind of what if from that Medium piece. What if AI just makes all this traditional work disappear? That's when the whole conversation goes from practical stuff to this really deep philosophical thing. That author's really challenging us, to think about our relationship with work itself. What's our purpose, our value, if work as we know it just kind of fades away?
It's like we're headed for this societal identity crisis or something. We're so used to defining ourselves by our jobs. What happens when that's gone?
It's a bit unsettling when you think about it. It forces us to really grapple with some big questions. What is work even for? What does human fulfillment mean? It makes you question the whole structure of our society.
Wow, that's heavy. It's not just individual jobs anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's AI potentially shaking up the entire economic and social fabric of, everything. Are we even remotely ready for a shift that big?
It's the big question, isn't it? And both sources agree we're at a crossroads. What we do now determines whether AI is a force for good, for a better future, or if it just makes the problems we already have even worse.
Okay, that is a lot to process. But don't worry, everyone. We're going to break it all down step by step as we keep going with this deep dive.
Absolutely. We'll get into potential solutions, how to upskill, reskill, all of that. And we'll talk about why developing a lifelong learning mindset is so crucial. Welcome back.
All right, so we've been talking about AI potentially flipping the whole work thing on its head. How do we even start getting ready for that?
Well, one thing both the WEF, and that Medium author really stress is lifelong learning. It's not like you learn a few skills and then you're good to go for your whole career.
Yeah, no more like learning one trade and then doing that for 40 years, huh?
Right. Now it's all about like a growth mindset. You got to be thirsty for knowledge, be ready to jump into new stuff.
So it's not just what you know, but like your ability to keep learning, keep drawing.
Exactly. It means being proactive, always
Right.
looking for chances to learn, messing around with new tech, just pushing yourself out of that comfort zone.
So we got to be the ones taking charge, not just waiting for someone to tell us what to learn.
Yeah, totally. And the WEF report, it actually has some like concrete steps people can take. They talk about developing T-shaped skills.
Okay, T-shaped, what's that all about?
So picture a T, right? The vertical part, that's like deep expertise in one area. But then the horizontal part, that's a bunch of different skills that let you work with all kinds of people and adapt to different situations.
So you're like a specialist in something, but you can also branch out, connect with other stuff.
Exactly. And this ties back to what the WEF calls human-centered skills, things like communicating, collaborating, solving problems, thinking critically. That's the stuff AI can't really replace.
So the future is humans and AI like working together, each doing what they're best at.
Yep, that's the idea. The WEF, they actually picture this future where AI handles all the boring, repetitive stuff, which frees up humans to do the creative, strategic, more complex stuff.
That actually sounds pretty cool. But I got to ask, what about like the people whose jobs, are probably going to be automated? What happens to them?
That's where like reskilling and upskilling come in. The WEF report, they're saying governments and businesses, they need to invest like big time in programs that help people move into new roles.
So it's not just on individuals to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
We need a whole system to support people as they adapt.
Exactly. It's a group effort, for sure. And that Medium article, it goes even further. They suggest we might need to rethink the whole, structure of our economy.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
How do they think we should do that?
Well, they bring up this idea of a universal basic income. It's like everyone gets a minimum income no matter what.
That's pretty radical. But I guess if AI is going to automate tons of jobs, we might need to think outside the box.
For sure. It's definitely controversial, but it makes you think, right? Like we might need totally new models to make sure everyone benefits, not just a few people.
So being proactive, designing a future where everyone has a chance to thrive, even if traditional work isn't, the center of everything anymore.
Exactly. Reimagining how we think about work, tech, even each other.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But are these just ideas, or are there actual examples of this stuff happening?
Actually, there are. Some countries are already trying out universal basic income on a small scale, and big companies like Google, Amazon, they're putting tons of money into retraining programs for their employees.
So there's actual movement. It's not just theory.
Yep, it's happening. The future of work is being shaped right now. And it's good to see people talking about it, taking action.
Okay, so lifelong learning, reskilling, even this universal basic income thing. What about education? How do we prepare kids for this world that's changing so fast?
Oh, that's a huge question. The WEF, they're saying we need to totally rethink how we do education. It's not about just stuffing kids with facts and figures anymore.
Right. I mean, we have information everywhere now. It's more about knowing how to find it, how to decide what's real, how to actually use it to solve problems.
Exactly. So we got to focus on those 21st century skills, creativity, critical thinking, communication, being able to work together, adapt, bounce back from setbacks.
So we're teaching kids how to learn, how to be flexible, how to think for themselves.
That's it. And
Yeah.
also fostering that love of learning, that curiosity, that bringing on attitude towards change. Because let's face it, in this world, the only thing that's constant is change.
It all makes sense, but how do we actually do that? change the whole education system. That sounds really hard.
Oh, it is. But there's some cool stuff happening already. Like some schools are using project-based learning where kids learn by working on like real-life problems, and some are trying personalized learning where each kid can learn at their own pace, focus on what they're into.
So ditching that one-size-fits-all approach, making it more personal, more hands-on.
Yep. And it's also about, giving teachers the training and tools they need to support kids in this whole new way of learning.
Okay, so a lot to consider for education, training, getting the next generation ready. What about the government's role? What can they do to make sure AI benefits everyone, that it doesn't just make inequality worse?
That's key, right? The WEF report, they're calling for a team effort. Governments, businesses, schools, everyone working together.
So we need a shared vision of the future and then actually work together to get there.
Right. And the report has some specific ideas like investing in infrastructure, promoting research, supporting those retraining programs we talked about, and setting ethical guidelines for how AI is developed and used.
So basically, create policies that encourage innovation, but also protect workers and make sure everyone benefits.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, moving forward with technology, but making sure society is okay too.
All right, we've covered a ton here, from what individuals can do to like big systemic changes. Seems like there's a lot to be excited about, but also some potential problems we got to watch out for.
Yeah, I'd say that's right. The future of work, it's full of both good and bad possibilities.
Yeah.
It's up to us to make sure it goes in a direction that's good for everyone.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect way to lead into our final part. We'll get into the whole ethical side of AI and how we can make sure this powerful tech is used responsibly for the benefit of all.
It's going to be an interesting one, so stay tuned.
So we've talked about like what skills we need, how education might have to change, but there's this whole other side to AI, right? Is it even like a good thing?
That's where the ethics come in. It's not just what AI can do, it's what it should do. How do we make sure it's used responsibly, fairly, so it benefits everyone?
Yeah, because tech, it's not neutral, right? It reflects like the values of the people who make it. How do we make sure those values are, good for humanity?
That's the big question for sure. Both the WEF and that Medium piece, they touch on this. The WEF, they're big on responsible AI development. Transparency, accountability, inclusivity, that's their thing.
Okay, so being open about how these systems work, making sure someone's responsible if things go wrong, and making sure everyone's voice is heard, that sounds like a decent start.
Yeah, it is. The WEF actually has guidelines for businesses. They say there needs to be human oversight, people checking on the AI. Companies need to be clear about how AI is used in decisions, and they need to watch out for unintended consequences.
So it's not just letting AI do whatever it wants. There are like checks and balances.
Exactly. And it takes like a team effort, not just within one company, but across industries, governments, even internationally.
Whoa, so we're talking about like a global conversation on AI ethics.
Absolutely. The WEF, they're pushing for international standards, agreements to make sure AI is developed and used ethically everywhere.
That makes sense. But while the WEF's focused on like building AI the right way, that Medium article is a little more, worried, right?
Yeah, that author is concerned that AI could actually make inequality worse. They're saying if we're not careful, it could just concentrate wealth and power even more, leaving a lot of people behind.
That's kind of scary. Like AI could make the problems we already have even bigger.
That's their point. We have to think about the big picture, the impact on everyone. We need policies that make sure everyone benefits.
So it's not just about stopping AI from doing bad stuff. It's about using it to make a better, fairer world.
Right. We have to deal with things like bias and algorithms, make sure everyone has equal access to the opportunities AI creates, and help people whose jobs get taken over by automation.
Okay, so we've got these two viewpoints. The WEF saying build it responsibly, and the Medium author warning about the potential for like making things worse. So what do we do?
Well, it gives us a lot to think about, but it also shows why it's so important to talk about these things, to understand the ethical side of AI, and to fight for policies that reflect our values.
So we got to stay informed, get involved, and make sure AI is used for good.
Exactly. The future isn't set in stone. It's being created right now. It depends on the choices we make, the conversations we have, the things we do.
That's powerful stuff. So to everyone listening, it's time to get involved, learn about AI, talk about it, think critically about it, and demand that it's used to make the world a better place. We're all in this together, shaping the future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.